Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Bannon or Airspeed Prime. I'm the site super moderator for Avatar The Lost Airbender Online.com, and this is going to be the episode commentary for episode 116, The Deserter. This is the final episode on the fourth disc of the book 1 box set, and as I have probably said for like a few of the episodes of Avatar that have not been like my top episodes, that this is probably again lower down on my list of 61 episodes in order. But there's something really interesting in every single episode of Avatar, and this is no different. This is a great episode that deals with Aang learning firebending, trying to learn firebending, and it's great for the philosophy of firebending here. And again, this episode again starts again with they're traveling around the world. They're trying to stay out of cities for the most part, so they're just searching around for food, and they come across a poster for a fire festival, and then we see wanted posters for Aang, Che, Zhang, and the Blue Spirit, which is just interesting to kind of note all the Wander posters we see throughout the series. Toph gets one as they'll run away. And then Sokka again, he's showing kind of his hatred of the Fire Nation there. Don't walk into the Fire Nation town because they'll be fired up with all their fire. And just a little reference to the fact that the Blue Spirit is wanted by the Fire Nation. There, just great continuity in the episodes. Momo hiding in a bush, and then Appa tries to hide behind the same bush, and just this great kind of like disguise scene of Sokka and Katara pull up their hoods epically, and then Aang does not have one, so he just looks like kind of like the Hunchback of Notre Dame sort of. And then we see Che spying on them. And this episode shows us the kind of the fact that all the Fire Nation is not evil. They are regular people that are just kind of like innocent families. It's kind of like Ozai's influence over the kind of Fire Nation military that is the kind of evil side of the Fire Nation. There's a little mask change there because Katara knows that Aang is the kind of more upbeat one usually, and Sokka's the kind of skeptic one. And then just the kind of Sokka had said before, fired up with all their fire, and he eats a food called flaming fire flakes and does not expect it to be hot at all. And then we get within the kind of innocence of the Fire Nation town, we get this kind of Fire Nation propaganda from like a kids puppet show where they kind of love Fire Lord Ozai, but they really don't know the history of the war with Sozin and Azulon and stuff like that. Which it'll be referenced again in the episode The Headband with Aang in school, and how they don't teach them the real history, what actually happened. We see Aang's eagerness to learn firebending. He's kind of this and the last episode have kind of dealt with his kind of immaturity in relation to his immaturity in general. In the first one, just about his kind of attachments. In this one, it's about his duty to be the Avatar, and that we know that once we know the philosophy behind firebending, the kind of you need control to do it properly, and we know that Aang is not kind of that controlled person. He is kind of fun-loving. He just kind of very kind of exuberant in a way, and through this kind of magician performer firebender here, we get the fact that firebending is based on control. The fact that he's kind of doing a trick called taming the dragon, and he pretends to lose control, but he is in control the whole time. And Aang sees that there is kind of a very loose control over fire. That's what this episode is about. We see glorious animation there on the kind of fire and air kind of confetti explosion. I see we see get our first look at Aang's dancing skills there with the kind of just the unusual music kind of starts. So again, credits to the track team for like just making a perfect soundtrack for the whole series. And we see kind of through this chase scene that Che is actually kind of a very good Fire Nation soldier. He's kind of more competent than many of the ones that are chasing him. Reference to the Sky Bison whistle again, showing off the kind of continuity of the show once again. Well, we get to see kind of our first look at bombs in the series, pretty much. I know the Sky Bison whistle once again. Appa doesn't come immediately because we know kind of he had hid out in the kind of hills around the city, so he takes a while to get there. And then one thing you could say about this episode is that Che kind of makes no reaction really to being on Appa for the most part. Just a Fire Nation symbol being kind of lit up. And we do see back in that city that the sheer amount of kind of Fire Nation soldiers that were kind of controlling the people, kind of showing that like I'd say like if they do anything wrong in that town, they are instantly like set upon by the Fire Nation soldiers. Just keeping that control, keeping their kind of like free thinking away from them. And we get the little backstory in Zhang that he was also a general in the Fire Nation army, just like Iroh is or was. And then the kind of enlightened reference there, sort of a reference to the fact that he is a member of the Order of the White Lotus. And we see that Che is doing this because he notes that the Avatar is there, and he wants to help him. And there sort of is the explanation there of that. It brings up the point of that people have deserted the Fire Nation army because they don't agree with where the Fire Nation as a whole is going. They sort of the thing with Shayu, like they're loyal to the Fire Nation. Wait, they're loyal to the Avatar, not the Fire Nation. Yeah. It's just like something that like some shows kind of may fail to mention, but like that there are people who are not with the Fire Nation, which that was always going to be Aang's problem learning firebending. How could he find a teacher who was not kind of loyal to the Fire Nation, but who can teach him fire? Um, there was Shayu, but like he was captured kind of because of the events that happened there. They couldn't save Shayu from being captured by Zhao. Kind of the kind of friendship thing in the Blue Spirit with Aang and Zuko didn't really work out. He sort of got through a little bit to Zuko, but as we saw in episodes after that, he was trying to capture him. Then we see Zhao again for the first time since the Blue Spirit. You can see he's like instantly business. He knows the Avatar has been here. He needs to capture him after kind of his failure in the Blue Spirit. And we see that like Zuko let Aang escape in the opening two-parter, Zhao has let him escape this time. And also at this stage, the events of the comic book Relics has probably happened as well, where he tricked Aang into being captured by leading him to some air nomad relics. So there's kind of Zhao has had two failed attempts. Now that's why he's kind of so angry in this episode. Now we see the eagerness of Aang. He wants to learn. And then like we're introduced to like Zhang Zhang for the first time here really, and he's so kind of gruff and short with Aang here. Real kind of disrespectful to the Avatar, which is kind of related to when Roku comes in here to kind of convince Zhang Zhang to teach him. And we see that kind of Zhang Zhang is like Iroh, and that he kind of speaks in these kind of metaphors, kind of advice. But his is just kind of so abstract compared to Iroh's. And then there's the thing of control, discipline, and firebending. Aang, we sort of know that he doesn't really have any. You know, the. And then here we're kind of introduced to the aspects of kind of philosophies behind the bending of the element, the four bending elements. You know, like Aang learned airbending because he is a kind of a bit of a free spirit. That's kind of aids him in kind of the lightness of airbending, flight. Stuff like that. He says there, water is kind of calm, cool, and as we find out later, it can heal. Earth is just kind of still and steady, but fire kind of consumes all if you have no control over it. You can't leave fire on its own, and it'll just be there. You have to have control over it. And then we here have Roku demanding that Zhang Zhang teach Aang firebending. And the reason that kind of Roku is so active in Aang's journey as the Avatar is because Roku kind of feels some guilt in putting Aang in this situation. It was his kind of mercy sparing Sozin, not being kind of more active in stopping Sozin, that led to the war starting. So that's why he feels he needs to kind of restore the honor of the Avatar. In that way, Zuko and Roku have a kind of similar path there. Honor. You see, Aang just wants to have fun, wants to do proper bending, you know, shooting fire out of his fingertips, as he says later. But Zhang Zhang is kind of, rightly so, kind of teaching him discipline, but he's kind of doing it in a really kind of rough way. Aang does not kind of, as we kind of find out later with Toph, sort of has a similar, maybe not as kind of intense as Zhang Zhang here, teaching methods. Aang doesn't kind of, he's not easily thought that way. Katara is kind of kind and compassionate towards Aang, and he likes that sort of style. Kind of one of those kind of problems with this episode is that like you know Zhang Zhang is kind of you sort of he is epic in a way, but like at the same time you kind of he's just so kind of harsh on Aang, and it just kind of makes you feel bad for Aang in this situation. And the way the episodes kind of makes Aang out as again a bit of a bad guy. He keeping the map from Katara and Sokka in the last episode. In this episode, he burns Katara and is kind of treated like a silly child. Like the kind of aim of this episode to kind of teach Aang that like bending requires discipline. It's not all kind of fun. It's sort of it's a good theme, but just the way kind of Zhang Zhang deals with it is kind of not the best. And then just this kind of little sincere moment from Aang. I mentioned sincere a lot, but that kind of like kind of defines some of these moments in Avatar. He kind of begins to be kind of kind to Aang. Aang kind of says he will be you'll have restraint, but as we see here, he doesn't fully listen. And that's kind of my problem with this episode. He says to Aang really sincerely, no, he says to Zhang Zhang, Aang says to Zhang Zhang really sincerely that like he will listen. But then the second Zhang Zhang leaves, he doesn't. And we see that Aang can like do firebending here. And then Katara, rightly so, kind of tells him to be careful, he is still a beginner. And then like Aang just begins to get more confident, as we know he is a bit of a kind of prodigy in all the elements. But then he just tries this kind of just insane move and just kind of completely loses control. Burns Katara's hand. And then Sokka comes in here, again very protective of Katara because of what Hakoda told him to do, his job. And he just kind of tackles Aang to the ground, just epic. And then you just kind of, for the second episode in a row, you just feel like Aang, he can't do anything right at this moment in time. I just find the way they kind of don't see kind of Aang's point of view. They don't kind of make any note of the fact that he is on a really tight schedule to learn these elements. And this is just a fantastic moment in the development of Katara in a mainly Aang focused episode. That she discovers that as a waterbender she has healing powers here. It is sort of a rare talent among waterbenders. And then how kind of Zhang Zhang wishes he had these abilities as a firebender. The kind of he thinks of firebending as a curse. And he just has such this down attitude towards firebending. You just sort of want to say to him like, don't firebend then, dude. And then just the way he kind of wants to stay away from firebending, and then a big fireball comes in, and he just expertly kind of defends against it. And we see that Zhang Zhang's style of firebending is very kind of defensive. Like we see he's an expert firebender, and he's just kind of just so defensive, the opposite of his student here, Zhao. It's this amazing wall of fire, and with the wooden ships kind of coming close to it, they're forced to land. Then we get some backstory on Zhao. I think Aang really feels just so much guilt over this, which will be referenced again in the Guru. And this is kind of what I really like about this episode. It sets up the fact that Aang does not want to firebend. It sets up why he is going to have trouble in his journey. He's already on a tight schedule, but now he's going to have a problem with one of the elements. And we see the kind of how deluded sort of Zhao is. He sees he kind of respects that Zhang Dong has loads of power. He probably is a better bender than him, but the fact that he won't fight with him, he just doesn't respect him. All he respects is power. And then we see kind of Zhang Zhang's admiration of Aang's sort of confidence in him. He knows that he knows that Aang has listened to him at some point. The little kind of grin to Aang there, which instantly kind of makes me kind of feel much better about Zhang Zhang as a character. If he had still been kind of really gruff about Aang, you would have kind of felt really kind of sour about him, but just the fact that he has confidence in Aang to just beat Zhao. And then once again we see the kind of wild style of firebending of Zhao, just full on straightforward, no self control, as Aang says there. Aang instantly sees that he's so consumed by rage that he's not even focused on what he's hitting. As we see, he set the kind of forest on fire. And it's just kind of like he uses the childish thing to even just goad Zhao on even more. Zhao sets one on fire. And then that gets on Zhao's nerve. Zuko has gotten the best of him a few times now as well. So that is just kind of, as kind of Zhao had been sniping on Zuko with the kind of honor thing and his father not accepting him. Aang knows that kind of, he has this kind of jealousy over Zuko. There he sets another one on fire. And just the confidence of Aang here. He hasn't attacked Zhao one. And he's wrecked his whole kind of Zhao's escape path. And it just tells you all you need to know here. He just roars and the kind of flames everywhere just get even more intense. And once again they have to escape. And Aang, again, we end with this thing. Aang does not want to firebend again. He's missed his chance to have a teacher. How is this gonna go on for the future? We know he's gonna go to the Southern Water Tribe to learn waterbending, but once he masters water and earth, what's he gonna do with fire? And again, there's always these kind of great moments in these episodes that are not plot heavy, where they kind of get out of the town and just have a really kind of nice scene on board Appa. We see Katara has learned some of her healing abilities here that Aang did get a bit burnt in his fight. And then here Sokka goes off on a rant about like show how clumsy he is. 2 fish hooks in this one, fell into the grease breath brush or whatever, and he was bitten by a snake. We see that like, oh, he is not a very good warrior. That has been the episode commentary for 116, The Deserter. We move on to disc 5 of book 1 with 117, The Northern Air Temple, which is I like the episode because it explores more aspects of kind of Airbender philosophy, like what happened to the other temples after kind of the genocide of the Argonauts. So I will talk about that in the next commentary. So see you then.